David Kurz looking clean with his whole sales team. We ain't come to talk nonsense, it's all about the process and profits. Until we make $1 billion from deposits. He never slacked and teach him to take action. So far from whacking, never gave up his passion. Can't catch him lacking, dapper down on his fashion. He forever stacking, running up all the cash in. Real estate mastermind, check out his book, he gave us the blueprint. Really can't hate the grind, put in the work, no making excuses. Quitting's a waste of time, you made it this far, don't make your life useless. Pull up and taste the wine, he got the flavor.
All right, everybody, what's going on? David Adam Kurz here. Welcome to another episode of the Freedom Achiever podcast, where we try to bring the top of the top people that are doing amazing things in our industry and other industries that affect our industry to the table to talk about everything that they're building up. Today, I have the honor of bringing Jason Haber in. Jason Haber is a real estate entrepreneur, author, speaker, activist, social good leader, which leads me to being the author of the book of The Business is Good, Business of Good. Sorry about that. And more importantly for today, all that other stuff's really great, but more importantly for today, co-founder of AREA, which is the American Real Estate Association, along with Mauricio Mansky. And Jason, you're like my hero right now. Thanks for doing this with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. You know, we've gotten a lot of requests to do podcasts. We can't do them all, but this is like the top of the list. I was like to the team, like we have to be on David's show. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that so much. And I say this with all my heart, man. Thank you. Like, honestly, like, you know, and we were having a little bit of conversation before this all started. And we said that, like, the majority of real estate agents have no idea who the National Association of Real Estate is. They don't know what NAR is, National Association of Realtors. They don't know that they sold realtor.com to a marketing agency. They don't know that they actually own the word realtor. So you can't just throw that word around. Yeah. Like, they don't know these certain things, and they don't even know what they do for them. They just know they pay a fee to their local association, and somehow NAR gets paid. And, you know, there's not a lot of knowledge behind it. And so one of the first things I want to ask you is why now? Why launch AREA now?
You just hit on a great point, because agents are like, well, what do they do for me? You know, when you go to renew your local dues, you're not actually just renewing your local dues. You're paying your local dues, your local MLS, your state board, and upstairs to NAR. There are no check boxes. It's mandatory in almost every MLS that you pay to NAR. And so agents are asking, what do they get for their money? And why is it mandatory? Like, why, as an agent, can I decide whether I want to join the National Trade Association for my industry? Quick example, doctors. About 15 to 20% of all doctors are members of the American Medical Association. Trial lawyers, about 15 to 20% of all trial lawyers are members of the Trial Lawyers Association. In our industry, 99% of all agents are members of NAR. And the answer is because there's no choice. And so I think choice is important. I think to have that freedom of choice for agents matters. And I think when there is no choice, when you just have that recurring revenue stream like they have, you know, it's money that's just coming in. What we want to do at AREA is prove our value, is prove to the agent community that there's another way. Listen, this isn't some sort of like, you know, death march blood sport. This isn't winner take all. There's a world where both organizations can exist and thrive. For one to succeed, the other doesn't need to fail. I don't believe in any of that generally in life. Right. And so, you know, if anything, I hope that just having another voice in the wilderness for advocacy and the other things we'll offer will help the industry. Whether NAR thrives or doesn't in the future, to me, it's almost immaterial at this point.
I also feel like, I always talk about competition and why there's always a Burger King across the street from a McDonald's, yeah. Right? Like, competition is healthy. It's normal. It's good. And actually, because you're bringing competition to the table, you're going to get a fair market share of the agents that are going to say, I want to be a part of AREA. And then NAR is going to have to like step up their game. They're going to have to actually do for agents, right? Yeah. What they've always promised to do for 100+ years, because there is competition stepping up to the plate and doing more.
Yeah. And listen, if they're better because of this, if this helps in any way, amazing. I'm all for that. We're not looking for any level of destruction here. The issues they have to deal with are we'll leave it for them to deal with. And if they can turn things around and be successful and it's good for the industry, great. And if we're a part of helping, amazing.
That's awesome. So I've got questions that I'm going to pull in. Like I said, I've got tens of thousands of agents that follow me on different platforms, and I just posted it once twice. I lie, in a private group and then out publicly. And we got some questions, and some of them were like really good, and some of them were rudimentary. So one of the rudimentary questions was, how much is it going to cost to join? NAR is $160 a year. Yes, it's mandatory to use them, but what's it going to cost me to be a part of Area?
So initially $0. So what we're looking to do in the first year is to build culture and community. Mauricio and I believe without culture, you're nothing. And the idea is we want to actually prove our value by offering Area for free initially for the agent community. And what does that look like? I think one of the things that bothers me about our industry is we're getting our teeth kicked in across the country on policy matters. Not so much in Washington, but in city councils and state houses around the country, we're losing. And I'm tired of losing. And so what we're trying to do is build community around the sort of issue advocacy work. And so we can activate folks around the country when there are pressing issues that we need to sit down with policymakers and other stakeholders and put local coalitions together to make change that's good for our agents and good for the consumer. And I think if we can do that, we get off to a really good foundational start. And so when you build culture and community, it's also making it inclusive. So we're going to have workshops to hear directly from agents. What do they want in a trade association? I know what I want. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of agents, if not thousands at this point already, over the last 5 months through my work at the NAR Accountability Project, which led to this. But we're constantly in a feedback loop to understand, because the needs of agents in Nashville are different from the needs of agents in New York. And so we're responsive to that and trying to understand that. So we're really in building mode right now. And I think if you're building, we're going to say, look, we're not going to charge you right now. So the barrier to entry is you're an agent. You have an active license. That's basically it. But we are going to ask certain things of you. We don't believe that more is better. We believe that better is better. And so the whole idea through Area is elevation. That's why our tagline is trade up. How do we elevate the industry together? And what does that look like? And what do we need to do? And those are the conversations that we want to have. The current system has basically benefited the NAR because the more agents is obviously more dues, right? And so the more you have, the more dues. I don't know if you know this, David. So in 1975, the average agent did 12 deals a year, 11.8 deals a year before email, cell phones, fax machines, social media. Today, the average agent does under 8 deals a year. Why does the average agent today, with all the efficiency tools that we have, do less than they did over 40 years ago? The answer is there are more agents today. A lot more agents today.
Saturation.
There are around 3 million agents or so for 5 million deals. I mean, so, I don't think that more is necessarily better. And I think better is better. And so the idea of elevation is really at the core of what we're doing.
Okay, so you said something a little while ago, and I want to bring it back. You said NAR Accountability Project. Tell us a little bit about that and how that led to Area.
So this is where this all started for me. In late August, Deborah Kamen of New York Times released a really groundbreaking story. I hope it wins a Pulitzer Prize. It certainly should, about the rampant sexual harassment issues over at NAR. And it wasn't just they had these issues of sexual harassment. It was that they seemed to not even acknowledge that they had a problem. You can see the quote from the CEO at the time. He basically said there's no problem with sexual harassment at NAR. Clearly there was. The article was met with silence. And I remember it very clearly. I was playing tennis in the morning. I read the article on my way there, and I was like, they'll announce a package of changes. But by the time I'm off the court, the current president will be gone, and that'll be that. When I got off the court, there was nothing. Midday, Saturday, nothing. But it was strange. So I started putting out some messages about, I think we need to look at this as a community. Still nothing. I organized a petition at change.org calling for NAR to change its president based on this reporting. That got traction. And I started connecting. It got forwarded around within the NAR ecosystem. I connected with a bunch of folks who were active in NAR for many years, but disaffected. 2 days later, the president resigns, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I did my little thing. We made some change. I can go on with my broker business. Well, I'm licensed in New York and Florida. It keeps me very, very busy. But then this started going off. Phone calls, emails, a lot of private messages on social media apps or in private messaging apps. Women around the country reached out to me. And they started sharing some pretty difficult stories with me.
Oh my God.
Harassment, assault, and worse. And whether they were at NAR events or by executives or by folks in the NAR ecosystem or just through the real estate industry as a whole, let's say, wasn't all just NAR for sure. But it was clear that something was missing in our industry. And in almost every story, not all, almost all, they told me that they reported it to someone and nothing happened. And they asked me to do more to keep going on. And the more I thought about it and talked with them, the more I realized that the guy who resigned wasn't the problem. He was a symptom of a larger issue in the culture over there. And so I decided to do more. So I convened a group of leaders, of women that I spoke to and other advocates. And I said, what are the things that NAR needs to do now to change? We had, there were some people out there saying NAR needs to change. Everyone's like, they need to change. But what specifically? No one was saying what specifically to do. So we put out a 4-point plan. And we launched a change.org petition. And I put it out in the public square on change.org because I wanted there to be a public accounting of what we said needed to change. And then let's see eventually what they end up doing. We put it out there and we built a nationwide coalition around it. We did a day of action in Chicago in September where I stood with a bunch of elected officials and advocates calling on NAR to make changes. That day, the Great Place to Work, which is a certifying body, like on all their emails, it said NAR is a great place to work. They had their certification revoked the morning of our press conference. The employees of NAR sent an anonymous letter asking for the new president, Tracy Casper, to resign. She later resigned for other unfortunate circumstances, which had nothing to do with any of this. But there was this sort of galvanizing moment where we stood in Chicago where people were getting activated both locally and around the country. And then they started to implement the changes. 3 of the 4 in some way or form were implemented. I've never got any credit for it. I never asked for any credit for it. I have no idea if they've never acknowledged my existence. So, they don't have to give us any credit, but you can clearly see what changes they announced this fall and what our petition was. And they match up pretty much. So that's fine. What was important, that change was made. So as this is happening, we're making this push. The lawsuit comes to trial and they lose. And what I noticed when they lost, I know everyone's talking about the verdict amount and the damages. What I noticed was the messaging going into the trial. The messaging was, we got this, we're going to be good. They weren't. They lost. They lost in 2.5 hours. It took to return a jury verdict. But where was the break glass plan, David? Where was okay, we didn't think this was going to happen, but it happened. Brokerage community, here's what you got to do right now. Nothing. So agents, MLSs, everyone's scrambling to redo their agreements. How do you talk to buyers now? Everyone's got to figure this out. All of a sudden, the world changed overnight, and there was no plan, it felt like. And that was very frustrating. And so, to me, the sexual harassment issue and the lawsuit are obviously separate issues, right? They're not. The lawsuit had nothing to do with sexual harassment. But to me, they're actually inextricably linked because they speak to the failures in the current leadership in our trade association. And at that point, people have been talking to me through the fall about doing something with the trade association. I turned every offer down and I didn't think it made sense. And once that happened, we really started to think about it. And I was doing some work, some exploratory work and talking to people. And someone mentioned to me, there's this one other guy who's talking about this in LA. You may know him, Mauricio Umansky. And of course, I knew Mauricio, and I heard him talk. I think it was a Real Deal event where he said, maybe we should just start our own thing. Agents, started by agents and for agents. And we connected in 2023, sort of late in the year. We had a series of conversations. A lot of them were just sort of aspirational, what we would want in a trade association, just to see if our visions lined up. It became very clear quickly that we had a very, very common vision for where the industry needs to go and what an association needs to do. So we decided to do it together. But the premise was that this is something that couldn't help the industry. This is not an anti-NAR organization in any way. We wish them the
right.
We're here for the agents. We're here for the industry. And whatever happens with them, happens with them. And we honestly wish them the best and hope everything works out. We're focused on doing what we think is a place in the market where we can be doing better, or places in the market where we can be doing better for the brokerage community. And that's what we're focused on. And that's the story of how we got from the NAR Accountability Project to Area.
It's interesting. You mentioned all the kind of hiccups that NAR has had recently and failures from an executive level. And it almost sounds like, I don't know, in my head, I started to hear the attorney that won the case against NAR. And I don't know how many of his news conferences you heard, but I was just annoyed with this. Yeah. Oh my God, was I annoyed by this guy. And so there was one part where he started saying NAR is a mafia. And he said, you guys need to look at this and this and that. And I thought, in my head, I thought he was saying all realtors are a mafia. And now that I retract a little bit, and he's like, because they force you into this and they force you into that and they make you pay 8% commissions. Like these are the things he was saying. And my biggest frustration at that moment was that NAR did not come out strong enough and change the narrative. And that really bothered me, right? Because I coach thousands of agents. I know that real estate agents have to go and sit and fight for that commission no matter what. Right. And so no one's walking in there and saying, hey, 8% is what it is. By the way, I wish it was 8%, yeah. Right? Like 8% is what it is, and that's what you're going to pay, and blah, blah, blah. And we're forcing you to pay me because I'm going to force you to pay the buyer's agent too. And that's how he made us sound.
Yeah.
And I hated that. That really bothered me to the core. And NAR didn't come out to change the narrative. They came out to defend themselves. And rather than defend themselves, I think they should have spent more time changing the narrative and helping correct the public view of real estate agents, right? Because yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You said when you started, our agents pay, what is it, $156, $150 a year up to NAR. But in 2023 and 2024, they actually pay more because there's a special assessment of $45, I believe it is, per member for a marketing fee. So if they're having this assessment, which comes to, I think, over $120 million, if you just do the quick math on that, 1.5 million times 45, that with all of that money, you would think that, you could actually have an effective campaign as sort of counter narrative, but I don't know how that money's being spent exactly.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that there wasn't a shift in the narrative, and I said, as you're telling me the story and I'm listening to the hiccups, I start to wonder, is this just 100 years of doing things the good old boy way and the way it's just been handled, forever and ever since, 19 whatever.
08,
and 08, and does it just transcend forever? Like this is how we do things. Nothing gets reported, women don't matter, like really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think, and that's why, I think we can be impactful without having a $300 million budget, which we will not have. Because we have it's been great, like talking to agents around the country, but particularly exciting is how many agents of influence in the first week have reached out to say, we're with you, because we will use a modern means of communication with the agent community. And that's going to include folks of influence like yourself and others who are helping us amplify our message without having to spend $300 million or whatever the advertising spends to do that, because we don't have that. But today there exist tools to communicate, quite frankly, more effectively and directly with our brokerage community. And that's why we're having these kinds of conversations. So listen, 108 years is a very long time. It's been here before any of us were here. And the idea was that they're just always going to be here. But you know what? Like, times change, and it's competition probably is good. And I think my goal is overall for the industry to be elevated through this disruptive period. I know everyone is very worried about commissions. I know everyone's worried about the sort of future of our national voice in the trade association. And I think and I understand it. And listen, like, not everyone has time to get involved. This is very time consuming stuff. And it's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? You're focusing on your clients and your business and doing right and doing good. But it's super important. And because it's super important, and I have a background in sort of some political organizing, and I sort of understand sort of the issues, I think pretty well. I just decided to get involved because, just like this fall, when no one else was speaking up about the sexual harassment, I decided to speak. And I think it was the right thing to do. I think in hindsight, it looks pretty clear it was the right thing to do. At the time, though, I thought I was just one guy in a chorus and everyone would be joining me and calling for a change. Instead, I was singing solo, especially in the first few weeks. And so I think you have to have the courage of your conviction to say you can stand up and try to make a difference. And well, listen, if this fails, David, if it doesn't work and we can't put it together and it falls apart, people make fun of me and whatever, I'm fine with that, because I'll know I took the chance and I took the shot. And
you took a stand.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work out and I sort of embarrass myself, I've embarrassed myself before, and it happens. It's life in the big city.
So that leads me into one of our other questions from followers that say, how is Area planning to shake things up for those that felt let down by NAR?
Love it. Okay, so it depends how you felt let down. So it's a bit broad, if you're let down by the culture, the community, or if it was like issues specifically. So for example, I know in Los Angeles, I did 24 hours in LA, which I don't recommend going coast to coast 24 hours.
No.
Especially sit and coach. But I did it. So they were very upset because they felt that they missed an opportunity to be directly involved in the ULA fight, which is basically a sort of a mansion wealth tax out there that has hurt the market, well intended to fund programs for homelessness. However, the expectation was it would bring in over $900 million a year. It's brought in less than $100 million. And so there were agents who knew this was not going to work in the way it was constructed and had better ways that they could go about this lofty goal. But the policymakers didn't listen to those folks who were there and made their own decisions. And now we have a big problem in Los Angeles with ULA, which is really hurting it's bad for the consumer and it's bad for our industry. And so local issues are really important. The other thing that I want to talk much more about is I think we need a Marshall Plan for affordable housing in the United States. I know that agents tend to not be involved in conversations about affordable housing because you think, well, it's not a price point I normally work with. But listen, every time there's a sale, there's a new customer. And then one day that customer is a seller. And one day they're going to buy something bigger. And one day they're going to buy, and it spurs new business for our industry, which is good. But I think more importantly, we need more workforce housing. We need more affordable housing. Too many folks are not able to get into the housing market in much of the country right now because of high interest rates and high costs. And I think we need to think that doesn't mean build. It means build smartly. How do we build sustainably? How do we build with well certification? How do we build homes that promote well-being and health so we can lower healthcare costs? Because we know that healthcare costs are driven by the onset of disease. How do you reduce that onset of disease? Well, if people are not breathing in bad fumes in their home, as a quick example, you can reduce certain healthcare outcomes. And so there are a whole host of things that I think we can be doing and talking about and talking to policymakers about around the country that I think can elevate our industry. And so those are the kinds of things we want to be working on and talk about.
I think housing is a cure for a lot of illness. For a while, I was very much involved in homeless veterans. And, we tried to give away homes to homeless veterans as much as we could. I was involved with the Veterans Association of Real Estate Agents. I was a president here in Miami for a couple of years. And, it's incredible what happens to someone when you put them in their own home.
Yeah.
Not just rental, but actually the ability to own a home. It's incredible what happens to someone's personality, their will, their desire to live and continue and thrive. And so when you do that, you're right, Jason, like, yes, that's a new customer. They go into lower income housing, and great, you sell them that property. But you're right, there's a cyclical thing that happens. The family gets bigger, they get better jobs, they get education, whatever the case is, they go move to a bigger house, then maybe even a bigger house. And then their kids move out and need homes, and then they get a smaller place because they're empty nesters, right? And so,
it's a virtuous cycle. There's no doubt about it.
Right. And if we do a good job servicing our community, and we do a good job at creating relationships with our community, we'll be there for all of that.
Right. And there's an interesting study. It was an urban study once found that people who own their homes are more likely to, if they see like garbage outside their home, they may pick it up. They're more readily to pick it up, or to upkeep, because you feel like you have skin in, like your equity
skin in the game.
Yeah. And so it actually helps communities sort of thrive when you have more homeowners in there. That doesn't mean you're like having billionaires and multimillionaires. It just means making home ownership affordable for more folks, to bring them into this system, to allow them to thrive and succeed. Maybe it's generational wealth that gets created, right? Maybe they hold it for 30 years. And then what was, you look back on it, oh, they paid this and now it's worth, we heard those,
Yeah, what was a $200,000 house and is paid off in 30 years is probably sitting on a $400,000 house. You know?
If not much more. So there are lots of conversations to be had about that we really want to get into, because I think
that's amazing. It's a big problem in all the major cities. I mean, you're in New York. I'm in Miami. Like, it's a huge problem here.
Yeah.
Like, employees that work the service industry in Miami, which is our biggest industry, can't afford to live in Miami.
Right. So where do they go? I'm in Boca Raton today. It's the same thing in Boca Raton. They have to drive 20, 30 miles to go to work. First of all, that's bad, because what does that do? That puts more congestion on the roads, right? And if they're driving too far, which, also environmental issues. So again, it's this cycle, and housing is so much more than just putting someone in a home. It has these other impacts for the person and community that make everything better when you do it right.
I agree. All right. So what are you putting in place? This is another question for somebody else. What are you putting in place, an area that will create, I guess, the walls to not become the next NAR?
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's an amazing question. Whoever asked that, thank you for that. That's something we've actually spent a lot of time thinking about. A couple of things. Bureaucracy, which I hate. You seem like an anti-bureaucracy guy too. But so one of the things that always bothered me about sort of the structure of the large trade association is that, Apple has 8 members of its board. I think IBM has 12. American Cancer Society has like 50, 60, which is the biggest I can find. NAR has over 1,200. 1,200 people on a board of directors. I have never heard of that in my life. It's a very bloated bureaucracy. They have a president, the first vice president, like the 28th vice president. There's a lot of bureaucracy there. And I think what happens is within the ecosystem, people will focus on the ecosystem itself becomes its own self-serving purpose. And what we want to do instead is not focus on what could be internal politics of an organization, but keep the focus on the members and our mission. And so our board is going to be much smaller, like 5 members at first or so, not 1,200. We're going to keep everything as transparent as possible by doing regular direct communication to our members. We're going to be rolling out a streaming service. So we'll be doing regular reporting and updating on what's going on. I think, listen, agents ask all the time, what does our trade association do? I want to be able to say, tune in at 5 o'clock and watch our latest stream.
Right.
Want to be radically transparent. We're going to be much, 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 much smaller, primarily because I don't believe as a value system that you should join an organization without choice. I believe in choice. And so we know we'll never be as big because we're not going to require people to join in the way that it's done today.
Right.
I believe I would love to see, as an example, MLSs have an option. And the default option should be no. In other words, if you want to join our organization, for example, I want you to have to click a checkbox to join in. And if you do nothing, you don't join. That's how I want it. I don't believe.
So do you believe that you'll be able to tap directly into the local associations at a very high level to be able to say to them, we're an option now? So maybe there's a checkbox that says no, NAR area.
Stay tuned. Maybe. I hope so.
Okay.
Or something along those lines. We're having a lot of conversations right now. I don't want to get, some of them are confidential, but if effectively where I'd like to see the industry go is where agents have choice is respected, and maybe you join one, maybe you join both. By the way, maybe 6 more people get involved and start 6 other trade associations. You join all those. All good by me. Yeah.
I agree. So there was conversation, and I read this somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, something about a national kind of MLS.
Yeah. So I think the way agents work today, like you're in Miami, and so let's say that you have a client that asks you about a property in Tampa. You don't have access to that in your local MLS. What do you do? Well, you can think you could go to Zillow, right? So you can go to someone that you can go to a competitor, someone outside the brokerage community as an aggregator and as a public site, but they can do that too. You could join another MLS and pay more money. I know people that are in multiple MLSs for this reason.
Right.
So they're double, triple, quadruple paying. I just think the way we work today is different. And for 25 years, we've talked about a national MLS, but it was always like the technology, it's complicated. There are a lot of data fields. It can't be done. Look, the way computer power works today, that is not a valid reason to not have.
It can be done.
It can be done. And it's not even that complicated anymore.
So this person that asked about, she stated multi-state MLS, but really it's a national MLS. And so what she said was, how will that protect buyers and sellers from agents trying to sell in every state since they now have access? So like,
right. So you won't be able to.
I'm in Miami, Tampa. Yeah. Right. I'm licensed in Florida, so I can sell Tampa all day long. Right. But what about now that I have access to, I don't know, Georgia, you know, and I could see all the property in Georgia.
But as an agent, you won't be able to list outside of your licensed state.
Yeah.
So if you're licensed in the state of Florida, you can sell in the state of Florida. Well, really what inhibits you is the system that exists today. You know, I mean, there are some statewide, you know, there are some like bigger MLSs that are multi-state, which I think are great. And I know a lot of the teams over there, and I think that's much better. But a lot of the, like my local MLS here, which is the Beaches MLS in Palm Beach County, I'm very limited in where I can search. I have clients all over the state. I have one who's a professional football player, and he has homes in the north part of the state and the south part of the state. But he asked me, you know, I can only look at the public information for the north side of the state. Why? It's 2024.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I also think that you can streamline innovation when you have from a national MLS. I think you'll accelerate innovation. I think you'll streamline processes. I think you'll be more fleet as an agent to be responsive to the, like, buyer demands over time change. And I think particularly after going through COVID, there's this sense of elasticity where people live and work today that maybe didn't exist before 2020.
Absolutely.
And I think agents today should be responsive to that. And I know the argument of like, well, just refer it out to an agent in Tampa or to an agent in Orlando. I'm not saying not to do that. What I am saying is you shouldn't be at some sort of material disadvantage if your client asks you something specifically and an MLS will give you that information. Instead, if you have to go to someone else, I just don't think it's sound. And the only reason you have to go to someone else is because of the system that exists today. So I think it's
I'm with you. And so
system.
I know what the fear is, right? So the fear is, okay, some guy in Florida who doesn't have our ethics, right? And our mentality says, all right, well, I'm selling this person's house in, Florida, and they're moving to Tennessee. So I'm going to use my national MLS and I'm going to find some spots in Tennessee and I'm going to call the agents over there and say, hey, listen, I'm going to send you my client, pay me a commission. Right? Like,
well, you can get a referral fee. There's nothing. You can get a cross-state referral fee. There's nothing wrong with. That actually is fine. I don't actually see an issue with that on the surface.
And I think personally, I think that happens now. I believe it's fine too.
Yeah.
I guess they want to stop people from, hurting the consumer, not having enough information about an area and just utilizing the MLS as a baseline, not knowing where they're actually placing somebody.
Right.
Based on schools and area and shopping centers, like knowing that and hurting the consumer by telling them they know. And so I have this access.
Like a local agent would be best for that. Yeah, like a local agent is always best.
100%. If I have a client in Orlando, I agree with you, Jason. I'm in Miami. I do not want to drive to Orlando. I'm just being 100% real. I know plenty of agents. Now we got the Bright Line. They're jumping on the Bright Line.
Amazing.
Orlando.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're showing properties in Orlando, and then they're hopping back on the Bright Line and coming back home to Miami. I honestly feel that's like I've burnt my entire day doing that, maybe two, and to show 4 properties. Unless that property is, luxury, maybe 4 million above, I have no business being on the Bright Line, And so, but I do agree with you that I would love to have the access so that as intelligent as I am in Miami and doing what I do in Miami for my consumer, if they ask me something about Orlando, I can tap into it and go, well, let's look at this and give them some answers before I go and refer them to somebody. And it also makes me more knowledgeable about what my client that I'm referring is looking for, helps me choose the right person, helps me educate that person on what my client's looking for, even possibly give them listings that are on the market that they want to go see and still earn a referral fee.
Right. I see nothing wrong with that. I think it's the way we work today. And I think the time came probably 10, 15 years ago, but it's certainly here now.
So how do you expect this to roll out?
So we're working there are a number of ways this can go, and it depends. So I won't go into all the details. Again, there's some confidential conversations. It will happen. There are a few different ways it could go. All of them are workable. So it's just figuring out the best way to do it. What's that?
What about off-market properties?
So again, we're not going to have a clear cooperation agreement. So agents can in theory then have off-market. The idea that we believe in is not just off-market for the seller, but off-market for the buyer. I'll give you a quick example. One of the features we have, which I think is really cool. If you have a buyer who's looking for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath at, call it 79th and Broadway in Manhattan, in a certain building, and a seller has an off-market 2-bedroom, 2-bath, we believe they should be connected through their agents who enter the information in the system. So there could be an off-market market potentially.
That's pretty awesome, because I know, some people don't want to go to market, but there has, for us, it's a hindrance to the agent. If there was a space that we can put it where it could be found,
right,
and say, hey, this is off market, this is the amount of money I'm willing to share, unless we're in a world where that person has to figure it out with their buyer, we can tap on that a little bit, by the way. I think it's a fair option.
I agree. I think it's a fair option. I don't know. listen, I would prefer everything be on the market and out there, but I understand not everyone wants their home listed like that. And I get it. So how can we be responsive to that? And I think we have a system that will be actually. There'll be a huge benefit for those subset of people.
What do you think the future looks like for buyer side commission?
So listen,
now that situation happened with NAR.
Here's what's going to happen. So fee compression is not going to be expressed universally around the country. I can tell you, I'm 100% certain that in places like the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where you have very complicated co-op boards and co-op board packages, there'll be no fee compression because sellers want to make sure that they have the best buyer brokers possible on the other side of the deal to get that buyer approved. Now, in other parts of the country, it's possible you could see fee compression. When this was done in Washington, the state of Washington, a few years ago, for example, there was very little fee compression. The trick and challenge is the conversation. And those who can have the conversation correctly with buyers will thrive. And those who cannot, bye-bye, will probably leave the industry. It's one of the reasons why I think that the agent count will start to go down, because the folks that aren't able to master this conversation and conversations like it will probably not stay in business. So the good news is I believe fee compression will be more modest than is projected out there. Will there be some deals where an agent goes, oh, this guy was offering, or woman or man was offering zero commission, and I brought my buyer there, my buyer didn't want to pay me? Like, things will happen. The market will suss out a lot of this. But I don't believe any of this is gloom and doom. I think within it, there's actually opportunity for the best agents to perform better. And that's what I'm hoping comes of this.
And it's interesting that you said, the conversation with the buyer, you're right there. There should be, I talk about this at a high level with our groups. And I also speak on the other side too. If you know how to have the conversation with the seller, and explain to them the benefit of actually offering a portion of the commission to the buy side. I mean, because you show them the comps, right, and say, here's what your neighbors are doing, and you decide at the end of the day, ultimately. But let's think, why are they offering 3%? And you can ask your neighbor, talk to people. You don't have to be afraid or bashful, but these are, and I think that agents who can prove that value prop are completely fine. But those who aren't are going to have a heck of a time with this. They are. I think there's a portion of our industry that's going to feel the squeeze, and they're going to find something else to do. Yeah. And by the way, I'm okay with that too. Yeah. Right. I am too. Again, I don't believe back to earlier. It's not more is better. It's better is better. So better can mean smaller and can mean net better. And then there are more deals out there for the agents who make it through this. So you mentioned, the agents that learn how to have the conversation and actually are effective at it are going to win. What is Area going to do about education at that point? Well, so education's a very big thing for us. It's top of pile. We're not going to ask much of our area agents. We're going to keep you updated. If you want to get involved in issue advocacy, we'd love to have you. But we are going to ask that you believe in education and that you be part of our education platform. Education, we think, elevates not just the agent, but the industry and also reputation of the industry. I'm sick and tired of seeing polls that show us with the used car sales man or woman. I'm done. I believe through education we can elevate, but truthfully, when I look at the education offerings, most, not all, I see, you just press up, there's some slides, you keep pressing a button every few minutes, and we want to elevate that. And so Mauricio and I and Danielle Garofalo have been spending a lot of time studying the education offerings that are out there and want to do better and are going to do better. Think masterclass for real estate, and think about not just recorded content, live content, in-person content, bringing together lecturers from outside the industry, inside the industry, focusing on not just what agents need, but also what the marketplace is telling us, where the issues are that we can improve upon as an industry, and creating something that hasn't existed before. We're not doing this to give people certifications so they can add to their signature lines.
This isn't like a trophy, but this is at like the core of what we want to do at Area is educate, elevate. And I think if for the agents that stay with us, they will want this too. And if you're afraid of education, if you're afraid of elevation in the industry, probably we're not for you. And that's okay too.
I think one of the things, and I don't know, you can run with this if you like, but I think one of the things that someone should try to figure out, and maybe it's you guys, there are so many really good coaches in our industry. There are also a lot of bad coaches, right? A lot of people who think they're coaches, but there are some really, really good ones out there. I mean, I can name 5 just right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
That would more than likely contribute some education, some form of videos or whatever, some sort of platform to one platform. Like imagine if you could log into one platform and have multiple people. And, if you as a person wanted to continue to listen to that person, then you can find them somewhere else, right? But to be able to contribute certain pieces of information, certain mythologies, certain psychologies of sales, things of that nature, if there was one platform where I could find 30 coaches that each contributed 10 solid videos of how real estate agents can succeed in this business, some of it might sound similar, some of it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Every coach has their own style and their own, persona and their presence. I think it would be a game changer for an education platform, right? Yeah. I mean, of course, whoever creates the platform has to vet these coaches and look at their content and see their content. But also, I think what happens is that platform gets buy-in because the really good coaches have really good clientele and they're really good and really great followings, And so with that following for that person to be able to say, I as a coach have contributed X amount of information to, the ARIA education platform. I think it's a game changer. Something you guys can think about,
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a phenomenal idea. I think, FR does it. They do, not on the platform, but when they do their annual conference, they reach out to people who are consistently on stage educating and they say, you want to do this, and there's different classes you can go to with different people, get different perspectives, and agents walk away more enlightened.
Right.
And
that's the goal of it all. If you can do that enough, you'll start to see the industry rep go higher and higher and higher. And it's just better for everyone. Especially
for the ones who do the work and get involved, right? Yeah. Like that's what it is. You said it. If you're not into education, we're probably not for you.
Probably not.
Yeah, I get it. All right. So a lot off question, but a lot of people feel like this is way overdue. How do you respond to this?
It probably is. But to be honest, until the issues of this fall emerged, it was a very difficult conversation to have because they were, NAR was almost like too big to fail. And it would have been kind of in the brokerage world, it would have been seen as, I think it would have been met with a more mild reaction. I got to tell you, I cannot believe both Mauricio and I are stunned at the reaction to this. We hoped that we'd have a really warm reaction, but what's happened is 100 times more than we thought. Not just that people were signing up, but the enthusiasm, the messages that we get. When we were in Los Angeles, we were walking on the street. We got stopped 3 times by people who came up to us who read the New York Times story. They know him because he's very well known, but they saw my photo too. So like, oh, you're the other guy. I was like, yeah, I'm the other guy. They were like, this is awesome. Like, why has no one done this before? It's timing. It's just that there's an opportunity now that I don't think existed before, and that would sort of set this up on a good perch for success. And like, if you had told me a year ago that like to start a trade association, I'd be like, well, what? I would look at you like you're crazy. And today instead, it's like crazy good because we're getting such an amazing response from all over the country. I just had a call with the agents in Nashville, Tennessee. And when they started the Zoom by saying Nashville's with you, and I was like, yeah, I was like, go Nashville. Like there's just, I'm getting calls like that from folks like all over the country, just, super excited. You can't replace something with nothing. So you had to have something. And now that we're creating this something, I think people are just sort of breathing a sigh of relief, and they're excited, but they have a lot of expectations, and the onus is on us to meet those expectations. And Mauricio and I take that really seriously. We're going to stumble. We're going to make missteps. We're going to make mistakes. People are going to, say bad things about us, but that's okay. That's all part of it. It's part of learning and growing. And we're prepared to do this for the long haul and to make this a success.
Well, I'm excited that you're letting people in for free to test drive this.
Yeah.
Because I think first of all, you guys are going to face some growing pains, like you just mentioned. And those folks, those of us who stick through the growing pains and see the growth happen, will be elated to do whatever you guys do next year, right? Like, whatever your plan is for charging or how it's going to work or what access they'd have to what they would have to what tools, that will begin to expose itself over the next 12 months, I assume. And, folks will take a look at it, and some hearts will be following you guys, man. I really feel that way.
I think so. I think people are really passionate about this so far. And we've been crowdsourcing ideas. What we end up doing certainly isn't coming from just us. It's coming from the community and everything we're doing with them.
So I have one more question from the list. I have one more question from the list, and I'm going to rephrase it because what it says is, can we stop offering the exam in Spanish? But I'm going to rephrase this question, and I'm going to say, because although I agree with him being Hispanic myself, and I do agree with what he's saying. I do agree that the test should be in English, but that's neither here nor there. The question that I would rephrase it to is, how do you feel about, and would you fight for, and would Area fight for changing the barrier of entry?
Well, raising the barrier of entry.
Yes.
So raising it is what I would say is, so the states are the regulatory bodies that administer the exams, not it's not like at the American Medical where you take a board certified. So it's the states that handle the certification. In many states, Florida actually has a harder test than most states.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. We have like 56,000 agents in South Florida.
Yeah. So I can tell you, believe it or not, I know it's an easy test for you, but someone who's taken both the New York and Florida exam, I passed them both out of the gate, but the New York one is easier than the Florida one by significantly. So every state is a little different. So I think it's like, you want to have requirements, but you don't want to push too many people out either. So, because some people have said, should you have a college degree? I don't think so.
I don't think that needs to be a barrier of entry.
Yeah, I think that's an unnecessary barrier for employment in the field. I really do. But I think it's actually, I'll tell you, I'll give you a great example of this. In the Florida test, for example, they ask you things like, the commission is based out of, is it A, Orlando, B, Tallahassee? Like, who cares? It's irrelevant. You can freaking Google it, right? Like,
how many square feet are there in an acre? That's like the number one question.
It doesn't matter, right? And those are legitimate questions. I just took the test like 9 months ago, so I still remember it. So I do think all the states should actually redo their exams, and the stuff that is easily, maybe one day, 30 years ago, you needed to go to a book and find it, and it was necessary to know this because you couldn't get the information easily. The things that you can just look up, no client is ever going to say to you, I can't work with you because you don't know where the Florida Commission is based. Like, it's not an issue. Like, so things like that, like I think that the questions that are asked, now I've taken 2 state license tests, so I have some experience with this. A lot of the questions that are asked are unnecessary and wasteful in some ways. So instead, I'd like to see far more education on things like, I think like you can say like fair housing or best practices. And I think you want agents who are armed who are going to do right by their clients. And the questions, I think, should reflect that. And if they can answer those questions right, they're probably good to go. And if they can't, they should probably be out of the industry.
Right. They should be focused around doing right by the client.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I really believe that the entire exam needs to be revamped. I hope that you guys make an initiative and create some sort of petition to start a kind of like a example of what you would want to see states put in their tests, and God willing, 50 states adapt some, if not all, of the recommendation. I think that would be huge. And by the way, I also think that post education should be more, right? Like there should be more to it. We should also be helping our real estate agents understand what it means to sell property and a method of selling property, not only ethically, but actually how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I graduate high school and I'm 18 years old, that's literally the barrier of entry for me to go to real estate school. Right. Yeah. And so, I go do that. And what I learn at real estate school helps me in no way in the field.
Right. They say like when you learn, like the broker you're with teaches you how to do. Well, then what's the point of the class? Right.
Yeah. Don't give me the class. Let me just go to a broker and intern for a year and then give me a license.
Right.
So
I really argument. Yeah. I mean that, and I think that's very valid. I think that what we're teaching is like, if it's not relevant for the actual, like benefiting the client or benefiting your sales knowledge and how to transact, it's probably unnecessary. And a lot of the this example I keep giving with where things are based or how many hectares are in, like it doesn't matter. So so I totally agree with you on that.
I think that apprenticeship should be a big thing.
Yeah.
My thought process, you brand new, you just got your license, you should apprentice at a brokerage that accepts you as a new agent, is willing to guide you for the next whatever months that they make mandatory, 6 months, a year before you can get your official, license. Like it's almost like my daughter's 15. She just got her permit,
Yeah.
She can't drive that car without me. I have to be in the car with her, and she has to do that for a year, regardless of when she got her license between the ages of 15 and 18. She has to have that permit for a year, and she is supposed to drive a certain amount of hours before she's allowed to even take her driver's test.
Right.
Yeah. Like, why aren't we doing that in real estate? And I talk about that all the time. I talk about this is one of the only professions that you can get your license and immediately go to Instagram, take a picture of a few nice houses and say top producing luxury agent.
That's true.
And no one know the better,
Yeah.
and take some really nice pictures of yourself and get a photographer to do that. Right. And you're in, you're a top producing luxury agent.
It's true. It's like you go to like flight school, like your first day of flight school, you're not flying like the 777, like as the pilot, you're in training, you're the co-pilot for thousands of hours until you get that experience.
And I know a lot of coaches are mad at me right now for saying all of this, because they're saying, wait a minute, Dave, hold on a second. These are the people that hire us to coach them, right? And I'm like, relax, buddy. It's going to be okay, because agents are always going to want to be coached and held accountable and pushed forward to the next level. Like my clients don't hire me to like sell one house. They hire me to hold them accountable to make their next $100,000 or $200,000, and at all different levels. Like I get clients that are new and I get clients that are making $500,000, but they want to be at 750, you know? And so I think, there's always going to be an open space for that, but that doesn't mean that the actual position of the career, the people who license you in this particular career, shouldn't make it harder for you to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Totally agree.
Jason, so I'm going to open it up to you real quick, because we've been together for almost an hour and I want to be respectful for your time. Anything that you just want to leave our listeners with?
So I've been humbled by, well, first, thank you for your service, by the way, before I go any further, and everything you've done in the industry and in the service of our country, which is incredibly admirable. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Jason.
And I think that this idea of service carries forward into what we're trying to do at Area, to really be of service for those who are watching this and listening to this. And we take that really seriously, and it's going to be an evolving process, but we're committed to taking on the fights around the country as we need to advocating for the industry as we need to. And but I have to say this, we're only going to be as good as our membership. And so
right.
I hope that folks who listen to this would consider just go to areausa.org. There's no cost. We're not selling data. You can just sign up for free and you get like a newsletter from us once a month, and you'll see my messages on social, at Jason Haber on Instagram, Twitter X, wherever else. And just, we'd love
whatever the name is.
Yeah. I don't even know anymore. We just, we'd love to have, as many members as possible as we build something here that I think can be really special.
Thank you, Jason, for doing this podcast with me. And again, I'll go back to how I started this whole thing. Thank you for starting area. I think it's impressive that you're doing it. I think it's bold. I think you've got a mountain to climb, and just know that there are a ton of agents right behind you helping you push you up that mountain, man.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, Jason, thank you for being on our podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening right now and you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching this, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you found us, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are syndicated across several different platforms. We want you to know the next time we bring amazing people like Jason on board. Thank you, Jason, for doing this with us. I appreciate you very much, sir.
Thank you.